After a long wait, we're finally getting the third installment to the most out-of-this-world Total War franchise, Warhammer. But make no mistake, this ain't your usual Warhammer. This ain't no 40k. No Space Marines, no orcs, and no glory for the Emperor this time around. It's all about chaos, mayhem, and eventually, multiplayer. If you've just managed to power through the campaign, we know you want more of that Warhammer action. And while it's an RTS at its core, you can't compare it to every other title in the genre, or even other Total War installments. There's still a lot to learn in the game, and we're here to share what we've got so far. Regardless of where you stand or which faction you choose to champion, we're here to make sure you at least have a better chance at dominating. Time for some blood for the Blood God. Without further ado, I'm Carlos with Ungeek, and here are 5 advanced tips and tricks for Total War Warhammer 3 that the game doesn't teach you. Knowing how to play your faction of choice and being able to counter everyone else is your real campaign endgame. The tutorial does its best to hold your hand in the beginning, but finding out how to use and abuse every faction will be up to you. And hey, we're here to help. The Cathay are an outlier, being the most defensive faction, and one could say the only pure defensive one. Focus on your infantry and heavy artillery to keep your enemies at bay. Make good use of your long range and push away any stragglers with your infantry and monsters. While you can pull it off, you'll lose effectiveness by trying to rush aggressively, and factions with superior cavalry, mobility, and monsters will likely overpower you. Exercising patience and warding off waves of attacks while defending is your best strategy for open battle. The Kislev and Ogre Kingdom have strong infantry, beefy cavalry, and fast, powerful monsters. And it's best to exploit these strengths by being more flexible with your tactics. You can opt to go aggressive and rush with infantry, cavalry, and monsters once the opportunity arises, or just hang back and use ranged and heavy artillery whenever in a pinch. The Kislev and Ogre Kingdom aren't as rock solid as the Cathay, and aren't as overwhelming as the Chaos Gods coming up. So alternating your playstyle and utilizing a good push and pull with your enemies would benefit you greatly in battle. The Chaos Gods are very straightforward. Khorne, Slaanesh, and Nurgle are pure rush factions that don't have any dedicated ranged units. I know, it's insane. For Khorne, it's best to harass your enemies with waves of heavy armored infantry, powerful cavalry, and fierce monsters. Slaanesh plays mostly the same way, except you won't have the benefit of being super tanky. Instead, you'll have speedy glass cannons. Make good use of your flanking ability by properly positioning your units on the back and sides of your enemies for devastating attacks. Nurgle drops speed altogether and focuses on debuffs, disease, and outlasting enemies instead of crushing them head-on. Tzeentch is the more well-rounded faction with a full array of infantry, cavalry, flyers, and yes, ranged units. It's best to employ hit-and-run tactics with Tzeentch instead of the usual rush. Make use of that sweet barrier mechanic that's exclusive to all units to either push the offensive or make a calculated retreat. And unlike the first 3, there's gonna be a lot more micromanagement here, so make sure to pay close attention. One common imperative among the Chaos Gods is to finish things quickly. While Tzeentch has more flexibility, units are still gonna be expensive, especially for Khorne. Moreover, the Chaos Gods lack the heavier fortifications and artillery that the other factions have. Playing the waiting game will see you losing even more units than you can throw at the enemy. So, gotta go fast with these guys. Battlefield options make up the core of Warhammer 3's quality of life features. and are of utmost importance when engaging enemies. First off, press spacebar to highlight everything and everyone on the field. It'll show your unit statuses from the get-go, and you have the choice to turn it on or off on the panel to the right and lock it in place. So choose which ones are invaluable and which ones are annoying. From these options, you can check the overall strength of each unit, their threat levels, which gauge whether you and your enemies consider each other in immediate danger, and the Cathay's battle harmony, a buff given to your army for as long as the melee and ranged units are in direct proximity of each other. Pretty sweet. You can also see your hit points, leadership, and ammunition for each unit. Hero and Lord portraits can be toggled on and off, and we highly suggest leaving the Lord portraits on so you can find them easily when chaos ensues. In terms of unit visibility, turn on hide foliage just to make sure you can see through trees and shrubs, because, surprise, a lot of maps are filled with these. It's pretty easy to either lose track of your units once you enter a forest or fall victim to a surprise attack. Take note of your battlefield overlays. Fire arcs and movement paths should be left on, just so you know how far your artillery and ranged units can shoot and how far everyone can move without obstruction. Selection outlines should always be left on, so you can tell where you and your enemies are. It's important to remember, and quite easy to forget, to enable guard mode, skirmish mode, and fire at will whenever necessary. Once your units run out of ammunition, they'll charge head-on willy-nilly if you forget to enable any of these modes. Now, this involves a bit of micromanagement, but once your battlefield options have been fine-tuned to your preferences, it'll be easy. Yes, war is literally the big daddy of this game, but diplomacy is the cool uncle that you always look forward to seeing over the holidays. Using diplomacy is vital and should never be overlooked. Actually, make it your go-to option. A constant flow of income will be needed to manage multiple armies, and if you've recently waged war, you'll need some healing up. Trade agreements can allow you the settlements needed to recover. You can also increase your wealth, giving you that much-needed resource to fuel the war machine. Various diplomatic pacts will ensure safety from other armies and allow your recruited lords to travel more easily. Of course, you're bound to fight battles at some point, maybe a few hundred over the campaign alone. Still, making good use of diplomacy can really save you the trouble of worrying over a surprise obliteration. Getting refuge, some coin, and not getting murdered by the Chaos Legion sounds like a great deal. It's not all a walk in the park, though. It'll be significantly harder as a human trying to strike up a deal with a Chaos God, especially a Chaos God like Khorne. But it's definitely doable, and could mean the difference between living to fight another day and becoming just another skull on his very fancy skull throne. Heroes and lords take a bit more priority in your army's hierarchy. It's best to know which ones to use for any given situation, like the back of your hand. Aside from the usual task of straight up decimating enemy factions, heroes can specialize in certain tasks, such as assassinating enemy heroes a la Sam Fisher, or straight up wounding the enemy army units, sabotaging and raising enemy tech and settlements, like a boss. Still, they're a huge threat on the battlefield and aren't just souped up versions of regular units. They can and will take a beating if need be. One effective strategy on the map is causing economic havoc on your enemy. What you'll need to do is place a certain hero that yields debuffs in an enemy faction's province. These debuffs could range from minus control to actual painful damage. You reap the benefits of these debuffs for as long as your hero stays in the immediate vicinity, halting all progress and posing a threat to anyone looking to make a save. It's basically mandatory time off out of fear of murder. However, this opens you up to attacks which will likely zero in on your location, or choose to lay siege on any unguarded settlements you might have. This is, after all, quid pro quo. It's something you'd want to practice a bit before making it a go-to strategy. Nevertheless, it's an effective one. Whether it's powering through for a decisive win or a last stand for survival, you can always count on your heroes and lords. It's easy to get distracted once skirmishes begin and the floor meets the ceiling. It's complete chaos, just as the gods intended. Micromanaging with precision and using proper tactics are vital in leading your army to victory. No matter the commotion, we can't lose track of where everyone is. Enter Warhammer's biggest life hack, the idle hotkey. Yes, it's actually in the game out of the box, no coding necessary. Tap the / key by default or whichever key you choose to map it, so you can cycle through any units that are more or less just chilling. Yeah, dude, Nurgle's champions are literally melting everyone's faces, but hey, no pressure, just relax. While it may not seem like a huge quality of life feature like the ones mentioned earlier, you'll realize how great it is to not constantly scan the battlefield, having to double or triple click everyone just to check if they're in action. A good army is a well-oiled machine. All of its parts need to be firing on all cylinders. Unless, of course, you're looking for a one-way trip to the scrap heap courtesy of the Chaos Legion. Then by all means, continue. So, there you have it. 5 advanced tips and tricks for Total War Warhammer 3 that the game doesn't teach you. This game is a solid sequel and a nice curtain call to a fantastic series. Definitely a must-have for every Total War and Warhammer fan. So what do you think of our short list of tips? What tips and tactics would you add? Have you picked up the game and achieved total victories yourself? Let us know down in the comments. Again guys, I am Carlos. Until next time, blood for the blood god! Hee hee!